being punked. That was the way that Grizzlies coach Taylor Jenkins described the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves over the weekend. But guess what? I got the perfect plan. If the Grizzlies don't want to be punked today against the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic specifically, I think I got the perfect winning formula for the team. We're going to break down that, and we're going to recap last weekend as well, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Co-host Joe Molinax getting a well-deserved day off. But today, we got a lot to talk about. We got to recap some things over the weekend, and we got to talk about what's a big week. I mean, there's going to be so much happening this week. I hope you're just staying in tune with us because we got this Mavericks game. Then we got Dillon Brooks one more time in Houston this season. Then there will be Dillon Brooks' return game to Memphis on Friday as well. And then, lo and behold, as we get into next week, around this time on this same exact day, we'll be previewing potentially Ja Morant's return to the Memphis Grizzlies, which is expected to come next Tuesday as well. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode is brought to you by none other than PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, all lowercase, by the way. Use the code LockedOnNBA for the first deposit match of up to $100. Appreciate you guys always tuning in. Make sure you tune in each and everywhere you get your podcast. That's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Wherever you listen, wherever you watch your podcast, Locked On Grizzlies is there. Excited about this episode on today with you guys because I was there on Friday, and the Grizzlies pretty much got beat down against a Minnesota Timberwolves team. By the way, that is really good. I think this team has kind of found, their winning way, their winning formula for this season. But a really good Timberwolves team got the best of the Grizzlies again, 127-103, and kind of put a little halt to all these improvements that we've been talking about with the Grizzlies, right? We talk about how the defense has been better. Well, it gave up 127. We've been talking about how they've been scoring the ball better in the paint. That game against the Timberwolves ended a 4 consecutive game streak of 50 or more paint points. So a lot of takeaways from that game, but one stands out way above anything else, and it's the way that not only Taylor Jenkins talked about the team, but it was the team talking about the team after the game. Everybody was fixated on rebounding. Rebounding was the entire conversation after the game, and to put it frankly, it deservedly so. The Grizzlies struggled on the boards in this game against, a Timberwolves team that is they're very big. They're not only one of the biggest teams, in the NBA, but they have guys on that team, like a Rudy Gobert, like a Karl Anthony Towns, like a Naz Reid, like a Kyle Anderson, all very good rebounders. Minnesota had a 54-28 rebounding edge in that game. And it's not just the rebounding edge. It's not even just the 54-28 that stands out. Offensive rebounds. Minnesota had 15 offensive rebounds turn into 23 points. The Grizzlies had 8 offensive rebounds turn into 9 points. To put this in perspective, Taylor Jenkins basically said that they punked us for the second time this season. You hardly ever hear Taylor Jenkins say the Grizzlies got punked. That's just not common. That's not the way you describe this team, right? Not the team that we've seen, over the past few seasons that's kind of been built on being the imposer, not the team that's being imposed on, as we saw in this game. But it was mainly Rudy Gobert. I mean, he had a field day against the Grizzlies in this game. I think season high for him 9 offensive rebounds, 16 points, 20 rebounds total, plus 25 while he was in the game, 6 blocks as well. He was tough. And it led me to a bigger thing, because that's kind of how I like to sum these things up, right? The Timberwolves game was kind of a precursor in a way, because there have been examples throughout this, and we're going to dig deeper into this as we talk about the Mavs upcoming game as well. Rebounding is kind of an issue right now. It's not a glaring issue, because when you play certain teams, the Grizzlies have enough. Like, they're not just terrible at rebounding. But if you look at the best teams, just going to throw in a couple names off the top of my head. We know the Timberwolves are the number 1 seed right now. You look at Denver with Nikola Jokic over there. Those type of teams. The Grizzlies are going to struggle. Look at the Lakers, right? With Anthony Davis on the glass. We've seen it already. Those are the type of teams where the Grizzlies are kind of going to struggle on the glass with right now. We know about Jaren Jackson Jr., and he's improving as a rebounder, but he's still nothing that opposing team is going to say, hey, we're afraid of that guy on the glass. But I'm going to go through Bismack Biyombo's stats real quick. Remember, in his first 4 starts, double-digit rebounds in all games. Let's look at these games right here. I'm about to go pretty much over a stretch of games. His last 10 games, I think, for Bismack Biyombo. His last 10 games. Let's go through the rebounding numbers. 9 rebounds, 2, 5, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 11 against Detroit last week, and then 3 against Minnesota. Now let's say them in reverse order. Against Minnesota, 3 rebounds. Against Detroit, 11 rebounds. Going down after that through a 10-game stretch. 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 5, 2, 9. Now, some of you will say, well, duh, it's Bismack Biyombo. I mean, we picked him up, during the season. What did you expect him to be, prime Dwight Howard? And I'll say you're right. But I'll also say that the bar was set very high early on with that stretch. And this isn't a knock on Bismack Biyombo in any way. This is more pointing out the fact that this is the Grizzlies starting center right now, and that's the rebounding production that they're getting. You got to get more. For a team that depends on rebounding so they can get out in transition and run against defenses that aren't set as much as this team do, you have to have the rebounding advantage. I think the Grizzlies this season are 6-2 when they win the rebounding battle. 6-2. There is no stat, I think, out there that more correlates to how the Grizzlies can win. 4-4 when they score 50 or more points in the paints. That's another good one. But 6-2 when they win the rebounding battle. They just haven't won it enough. 8 games they won the rebounding battle out of 21 games played. Simply not enough. How do they fix this rebounding thing? Right now, it looks like it's going to have to be internal as we get closer throughout this week when we figure out what's going to happen. Who's the player that's going to be released from the roster in the John Morant decision. We'll dive deeper into that topic when me and Joe Molax get back on the show. But as of right now, rebounding is an issue. It's not like the glaring issue of, the offensive struggles and things like that. But it is something that will come into play when you go against all of these elite teams. I think that's where it is. Taylor Jenkins challenged the team. And guess what? I think this is a perfect time for the team to say, you know what? You're right. We did get pumped. And I just want to point out that make sure you hear this part, because this was my takeaway from the rebounding side of things when we talked to the players after the game. Talking to those guys, Xavier Tillman, Jaren Jackson Jr., rest of the players, Santi Aldama, talking to the players about the rebounding, it kind of felt similar to the day we were talking to them about the defensive communication issues. Remember, Derrick Rose called the team out. Then there was Marcus Smart's comments. Then they had the practice that was solely focused on improving defensive communication. That's kind of how it feels about the rebounding right now. Xavier Tillman told me after the game, he said, we're awful at team rebounding right now. Xavier Tillman's words, not mine. And him, Jaren, I think David Roddy as well, all these guys talked about the idea that right now it's only where the Grizzlies are having a problem is It's one guy having to control the glass. For example, the guy that Rudy Gobert is boxing out. The Grizzlies would prefer that guy has to just simply focus on boxing out Rudy Gobert. And then other teammates will enter the picture to grab the boards. And we talked about it in the past, right? The Grizzlies having good guard rebounders. Well, that's when it comes into play. Where a guy like Xavier Tillman or Bismack Biyombo, their priority should be keeping Rudy Gobert off of the glass. And sometimes that takes you out of position to get the rebound. And so instead of Karl Anthony Towns or, Kyle Anderson or another Timberwolves player swooping in there untouched to get the rebound, you need more Grizzlies players to hit the glass, put a body on a body, and if not, go up there with two hands and snag it. That's what they need. So, again, this is the energy from the rebounding, the concerns. David Roddy said we've been harping on this for a couple weeks now. Xavier Tillman said they're awful at it right now. At the same time, it reminds me of the constructive criticism that was given out when we talked about the defensive communication issues. And I say that because with the defensive communication issues, we haven't seen that many of them as of late. Whereas in that situation, I will say this, Taylor Jenkins came up with an excellent plan. I think the practice plan that we talked about it, where the player-led practice was a great idea. In this case, I don't know if there's a real answer other than you just got to want it. As Taylor Jenkins said, there's no really magic, no super strategy to becoming a better rebounding team. You just got to go get it. And that's what the Grizzlies are going to have to do, going forward, starting with the game coming up against the Mavericks that we're going to talk about up here in a second. And specifically from that game, we got to talk about Luka Doncic. Because the Grizzlies didn't play him the last time, but he's back for this game. So we're going to talk about that. It's coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, we got to talk about our friends over at PrizePicks. Because if you don't know by now, PrizePicks is the number one daily fantasy sports option out there for you as well. And look, PrizePicks is not only the best, it's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are easiest, and it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It is simple. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other people and whatnot, you just pick. It's simple. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And guess what? At that point, cha-ching, just watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks. Look, I just put it as simple as this. You go to a player, Jaren Jackson Jr., for example. We just looked at Bismack Biyombo's rebounding numbers. All you have to do is say, I think he'll get more than 6 rebounds in this game. I think he'll get less. And you make 2 to 6 player stat projections, and that's how you come up with your selections. For example, I talked to a couple of people over at PrizePicks, and one guy said this week he's taking Stephen Curry for more than 25 points, Nikola Jokic for more than 10 rebounds, Anthony Davis for more than 2 blocks, and Damian Lillard for more than 4 3-pointers made. He's going to package that together, and if he wins, he's going to be a rich guy real soon. So look, PrizePicks is the place to go. It's the number one daily fantasy sports option. Make sure you go take advantage of terrific opportunities over there at PrizePicks. How do you do it? Well, it's simple. Go to prizepicks.com right now /lowercase locked on NBA. That's LOCKED on NBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. So make sure you go take advantage of that terrific opportunity over at PrizePicks. The Grizzlies have a terrific opportunity against the Dallas Mavericks coming up. Luka Doncic is playing, and it's still a terrific opportunity. We're going to talk about that and why coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer here for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for tuning in with us on today for today's edition of Locked On Grizzlies. And for the rest of the episode, we're going to be talking about this game against the Dallas Mavericks. You missed the first segment. We talked about Taylor Jenkins challenging the team, challenging the rebounding, wanting the team to be better rebounding, saying that the Minnesota Timberwolves punked the Grizzlies twice. And then there's the sense of urgency that I got from the players, after talking to Taylor Jenkins as well. But look no further. Today is all about defending Luka Doncic. I think it's simple. You want to win? You want to beat the Dallas Mavericks today? You got to guard Luka Doncic. And let me explain why. Here's the thing. The Mavericks will be missing a lot of guys in this game. And I know we've had this situation before, and the Grizzlies, won against, the Mavericks earlier this season when both teams were undermanned. And I want to keep saying both teams because I'll say that the Grizzlies, if there's one team that doesn't care about you missing players, it's the Grizzlies. But the Grizzlies beat the Mavericks 108-94 in Dallas, a little more than a week ago. In that game, I think it was, no Luka Doncic for the Mavs. There was no Luka Doncic specifically, and no Tim Hardaway Jr. Both of those guys were out, and those are two of the Mavs, top scoring options. Well, in this game, it's going to be a little bit different because the Mavs are still going to be missing players. Kyrie Irving out. Josh Green, another guy who started in that last game against the Grizzlies, he's out. Maxi Kleber, a terrific 3-and-D option for the Dallas Mavericks, he's out. Grant Williams, another guy, I don't have to tell you. You've seen Grant Williams shoot feels like 100%, maybe 75% from three-point range against the Grizzlies this season. He's out. So let's break it down here. A couple starters in Kyrie Irving, Grant Williams, Josh Green, as well, a guy in that last game against the Grizzlies who had 10 points and 5 assists. And while most of the starters were heavily in the mind, he was -6 in that game. So clearly a positive impact as a defender and a guy who just does some of everything. All those guys are important players to what the Mavs like to do. But some of you will say, well, it doesn't matter because Luka Doncic is on the floor. I agree to you. I agree with you. But here's the thing. I challenged Taylor Jenkins. Taylor Jenkins challenged the Grizzlies in the last segment, right? I challenged Taylor Jenkins to hold Luka Doncic to one or the other. Less than 30 points or less than 10 assists in his upcoming game. One or the other. Choose a poison and stick to it. Do not have him out here playing freely, having his way. This cannot be, like his last game, 32 points, 10 assists against Portland, or the game before that against Utah where he had 40 points and 11 assists, or the game before that against Oklahoma City where he had 36 points and 18 assists. This cannot be like any of those games. And I say that because if you go through the last 3 games, he's had at least 30 points and 10 assists in each of those games. The Grizzlies have to pick an option here because guess what? The Mavs are going to miss a lot of star power, in this game. Kyrie Irving, yes, he shot 3 of 15 in that last game, but the Mavericks are going to be missing a lot of star power. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be back. Yes, he's going to be back, and he is probably one of the top candidates right now for 6th Man of the Year. But if you look at it, the Mavs only have 4 guys averaging double figures this season. 5 if you want to round it up with Grant Williams, who's averaging 9.8 points per game. So let's say you include Grant Williams in that group. Of those 5 players, you're only going to have 3. One of them is Luka Doncic. The other is Tim Hardaway Jr., who's averaging 16.9 points per game. And the other is Derrick Jones Jr., who's averaging 10.1 points per game. And quite frankly, the Grizzlies did in that first meeting, Derrick Jones Jr. beat you, he beat you. Here's my option. I think you throw all the doubles, all the traps. You throw the kitchen sink and more at Luka Doncic. Taylor Jenkins did a terrific job drawing up the game plan against Kyrie Irving in that last game. As I mentioned, Kyrie Irving shot 3 of 15 from the field, easily his most frustrating, his ugliest game of the season this year. You can – look, let me be clear, man, because Luka Doncic is one of one. Kyrie Irving is a champion. He's great. But Luka is a level above that. So with all that being said, it's going to be tougher. You still might not make Luka shoot 3 of 15, but I think the strategy should be similar. The Grizzlies did a great job. They face-guarded Kyrie Irving, made it hard. When the ball left Kyrie Irving's hands, it was hard to get it back in his hands. And when it got back in his hands, he saw crowds. He saw multiple bodies. Do the same thing against Luka. If you go in this game saying, yeah, we got Vince Williams, he's a nice defender. We got David Roddy, he's a nice defender. We're just going to see how they fare against Luka early and we'll adjust. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because by the time you're talking about adjusting, he'll already be hot. And we know Luka, when he gets hot, he'll shoot that step back over you, me, that guy over there, the guy behind you, the guy in the corner over there. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it when he's hot. So you got to go into this game. You got to be the aggressor. Make Luka get the ball out of his hands. And as I said earlier, you want to choose between the points and the assists. If he goes to this game and he has 20 points and he finishes with 15 assists, that's a win to me. Because whether you win or lose the game, you didn't let the star player do it. You made Tim Hardaway score 30 points. You made Derrick Jones Jr. score 20 points. You made other guys, Derek Lively potentially, you made him score 20 points. If that's how the Grizzlies go down in this game, oh well. But if Luka has 45, 10 assists, and he's out there, dancing around saying, oh, these guys can't guard me, then you failed. You failed the assignment. I think this is a very winnable game for the Grizzlies, being that there's no Kyrie, secondary superstar. So when Luka Doncic exits the game, there's going to be terrific opportunities for the Grizzlies to go on runs and take advantage of those, those stretches. And again, yes, they have terrific scoring power by the likes of, a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. But Derek Lively's been a great young player for the team. He's another guy you have to keep off the glass in this game. Luka and Derek Lively love to run those two-man, pick and rolls, and he finds Derek Lively a lot. But guess what? Make Derek Lively beat you in those situations, in my opinion. I think that Luka prioritizing taking away his score. Now, Taylor Jenkins could be of opposite. He said, hey, look, we don't care if he scores 40 as long as no one else scores. That's the other win, I think, in this perspective. You just can't have Luka doing both. As I mentioned in his last 3 games, 30 and 10 in each of those 3 games at least. Can't happen tonight. You just shouldn't let it happen. If he scores 30 and has 4 assists, you win in my mind. If he scores 20 and has 15 assists, you win in my mind. So I think that should be your Luka plan. I think they should face guard him like they did Kyrie Irving. When the ball leaves his hands, make it super tough, deny. And guess what? Make the Mavs work to get the ball back in his hands, because make them throw risky passes, create turnover scenarios for the Grizzlies to get out and run in transition. And if the Grizzlies run in transition, that should create a better offensive game for them. So we're going to talk about the offense next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we do that, we have to talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Because look, FanDuel is where right now, if you haven't started your major FanDuel account yet, that means you're a new customer. And new customers can get $150 in bonus bets. How do you do that? All you got to do is win a $5 money line bet. Let's say there's some Cowboys fans on here. I know it. I'll give you guys a little credit for the win on Sunday night against the Eagles. Let's say you wanted to make a $5 money line bet last night. You said, I think the Cowboys are going to beat the Eagles. And you put $5 on it. You put $5 on that, you get $150 in bonus bets. As simple as that. It's $150, man. And that goes straight into your FanDuel account for bonus bets. So look, if that doesn't convince you enough to join FanDuel, how about the way that the app is so easy to use? Quick, easy, and safe withdrawals. You can bet spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/locked-on. And this is in all uppercase. FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's LOCKED to take advantage of this opportunity. Coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about the opportunity that the Grizzlies have against the Mavs on offense. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer here for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee, talking to you about the Grizzlies and everything going on with the team. If you're just joining us on this episode, so far we talked about Taylor Jenkins challenging the team, right? After that loss to the Timberwolves, where the Grizzlies lost by 24 points, where they were dominated on the glass, he said we got pumped for a second time against Minnesota. That has to change. You got to respond to that. And how do the Grizzlies respond to that? Well, you get Luka Doncic today, a shorthanded Mavs team that's missing, 3 of their top scorers in this game. Take advantage. No Kyrie, no Kyrie in this game, no Grant Williams. 2 guys who are terrific for this team. You got to take advantage. If you know Josh Green as well. So I think the game plan should be centered around Luka Doncic, but that's defensive. What about the offense? we've noticed all the trends as of late, and some are bigger than others. I think for the Grizzlies to win this game, the offense has got to be, a little bit better. We've been talking so much, good about the defense that the offensive struggles have kind of, we talk about them, but we don't talk too much about them. Like right now, Memphis just isn't a team that can score the ball well. They're just not that team right now. To put that in perspective for you, you want to know the last time the Grizzlies scored 110 points in a basketball game? November 18th against the San Antonio Spurs. That's the last time that the Grizzlies reached 110 points. Since then, 100 against the Celtics, 91 against Houston, 89 against the Suns, 97 against the Timberwolves, 105 against the Jazz, 108 against the Mavs, 109 against the Suns, and they did score 116 against the Pistons, but what's understood doesn't got to be explained. You know why I skipped the Pistons. Lost 18 games in a row. But I digress. 103 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, sure, excluding the Pistons, and you might as well exclude the Spurs in that as well. But even then, if you exclude the Pistons and the Spurs, two teams that are on a trajectory they're closing in on the longest losing streaks in NBA history. You got to go back to when the Grizzlies scored 121 against the Utah Jazz on November 10th. Offense is kind of a big issue right now, and it's a big issue for obvious reasons. You're missing Luka Doncic, one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. You're missing Marcus Smart, who's very capable of knocking down spot-up three-point shots while being a decent facilitator and playmaker as well. You're missing Ja Morant, who's going to probably give you 25-plus points when he gets back while pushing the tempo and transition and creating more paint scoring opportunities, creating more easier looks for guys like Desmond Bane, and other three-point shooters as well. So you're missing a decent-sized chunk of your scoring. And right now, it has led to some notable misses within the offensive production. And you can start with the starting lineup. That's where I'll start, because I think with Desmond Bane, you know what you're going to get. With Jaren Jackson Jr., you're hopeful of what you're going to get, and lately you've been getting it. Bismack Biyombo, I'm not going to keep harping on him because Bismack Biyombo's never really been a scorer. But again, last 3 games, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. Game before that, 4 points. Game before that, 6 points. Last game where he reached double figures against Minnesota, November 26th, 10 points. Before that, 6 points, 5 points, 2 points. You don't really expect him to be a scoring option. And quite frankly, you can't, because this is who Bismack Biyombo has been in his career, and you bring him in for defense. You don't bring him in to be some terrific scorer. But Derrick Rose, last 3 games for Derrick Rose, 6 points, 4 points, 6 points. You need Derrick Rose to bring more to the offensive game. And he can. You know why? Because you go to the 3 games before that, 14 points, 12 points, 17 points. Derrick Rose has got to be a better scorer for the Grizzlies right now. They simply need it. And you just can't have these games where we've seen lately the Grizzlies have every game they've gone into at least 2 starters are finishing, in single digits, in scoring automatically. Like they go into this game, that Derrick Rose and Bismack Biyombo aren't going to reach double figures. And it hasn't been much better for David Roddy, who's the other starter. Against Minnesota on December 8th, 13 points. Take away that game, 4 points, 8 points, 6 points in the previous 3 games before that. They're not getting enough starting lineup offensive production. And they're going to need more. Desmond Bane has been great. I think he's going to have to be great again. Desmond Bane, look, hey, you can't afford too many off nights right now. The team needs you. But the guy who's really got to bring it tonight to me is Jaren Jackson Jr. We can talk about Derrick Rose. We can talk about Bismack Biyombo. Talk about David Roddy needing to step up. But a guy you should be able to depend on, a guy that you know what you're getting from, is Jaren Jackson Jr. Last 3 games, you talk about a guy that's been looking like an all-star. 21 points, 7 of 14 shooting. I got to point out the efficiency. 24 points, 10 of 20 shooting. 37 points, 13 of 21 shooting. 3 consecutive games, 20 or more points, 50% shooting from the field. I don't have to tell you that it's the first time that Jaren has done that this season because you already know. Because we've been tough on Jaren a little bit on this show, and because he's capable of much more, and these last 3 games show it. But guess what? He can't stop here. Because you can't depend on Derrick Rose to be somebody who's going to drop you 40 at this point. I mean, with these extra days off, I know that Derrick Rose is a guy who's big on maintenance. He should be very rejuvenated and refreshed going into this game. David Roddy seems to like playing against the Mavs. He plays some of his best basketball in his career is against the Dallas Mavericks. Bismack Biyombo, you know what you're going to get. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s got to bring it. And he should have every reason to do so. You know why? You go through Jaren Jackson Jr.'s last 10 games. Only 1 game did he score less than 10 points. December 1st against Dallas. 4 points, 2 of 8 shooting. Only played 14 minutes due to foul trouble, and then the game was pretty much out of hand in the fourth quarter. Didn't even really need Jaren at that point. So 14 minutes, 2 of 8 shooting from the field, 4 points. Got to respond. Because Dallas is going into this game, yeah, we got his number. Yeah, Derek Lively, you got him. Take care of him. Jaren's got to respond in this game, and I fully expect him to do so. But you need Dez and Jaren big nights, and you need that third player, whether it's Santi Aldama, coming off the bench, whether it's Jalen Noel, who played terrific basketball in that last game. You need terrific offensive scoring production from the bench because you can't depend on the rest of the starters to be those groups. This is a very winnable game for the Grizzlies. I've been on the record. I said the Grizzlies need to get to 8 wins. While John Morant's out, you only got 4 games left. So you got to win 2 of these games. At Oklahoma City, that's probably the toughest one remaining, if you ask me, at OKC. So if we chalk that one up, that means you got to win against Houston once. You get Houston at home, where they've been one of the best teams in the NBA. So good luck with that on Houston's home floor. But then you get Houston on the road. But you get Houston at home against the Grizzlies on Friday night in FedEx Forum, where they've been one of the worst teams in the NBA. Yes, the Grizzlies haven't been good at home either, but that's a game that has to be considered winnable. And this game, you're playing against Luka and one of the top teams in the Western Conference. But if they don't have Kyrie, they don't have Grant Williams, you should go in this game feeling confident. And the Grizzlies have every reason to be confident heading into this game. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, like myself, like Joe Mullinax, plus our national shows. Our national Locked On shows will be covering every single league and game out there. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and please subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's all day long. If you're just chilling, lay back in the bed, turn that Locked On Sports streaming channel on. Locked On Sports Today is where you go. And make sure you subscribe to that as well. Next on Locked On Grizzlies, on our next episode, Joe Mullinax is going to be with you, and he's going to talk about what happened in this game against the Dallas Mavericks. If you know Joe Mullinax, I think you're going to get 1 or 2. You're going to get a very disappointed Joe, or you're going to get a very happy Joe. Because, again, this is a very winnable game, and I think me and Joe are on the same page of saying this is one that Memphis should get. This is a game that they should win. This is a game that they can win. Yes, I know the offense is struggling. I know, that the Grizzlies have their issues, but you got to get a couple wins so our Jaws out here. And you got to get a couple more. I think these 2 games that we just outlined, specifically starting with this one, very winnable game for the Grizzlies. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.